Blessings. This is Miriam Rabbeinu, and I'd like to read one of the first poems I wrote after this profound religious and healing experience when I decided to begin the Book of Alms. This is called The Quickest Path to Redemption. Let go and flow is always the answer when confronted with things that hurt the soul yet allow us to grow, even more so when they empower us within it. The tools of instruction to defeat inevitable destruction. I don't know about you, but I'm eternally transcending, divinely ascending, an unintended ending that was detailed and given to guide and contrast the core of our vast need for accountability, parading arrogantly to an unwilling destiny plagued and infesting. When all we need to do is believe it to perceive it, I seek the path that can lead to the time we conceive it, in the process always discovering why it's needed, because no one can even see it until they are forced to experience it. I just dig deeper, connecting elements, a plan so perfect that when liberation hits and clarity finally arrives, you're so thankful you survived. I had moments I sincerely begged to die and almost lost my mind. Insulted and disrespected by false projections created to ensure I was neglected and rejected by a world unkind, submissive, and blind. Shouting self-righteously, conform or die. Everything you believe is a lie. I don't believe in the unseen. Ask your God to help you out this time. Faith is surely forged in those moments when the answer comes instantly from a source deep within me that confirms infinitely that what we choose to believe shapes everything, including the deflections subtly deceiving. As you're rendered impaired by the damage they bared on the womb of a mother in attempts to rupture the bond that defines us, to scatter and shatter eternal sparks of divinity, replicated endlessly and rather suspiciously suddenly in these very interesting times. Born connected to Source, finding the only truths, buried and hidden deep in between the lines of endless lies disguised to blind mankind. Accepting that's what it took for me to get a good look at the forces the book already told me, but I had denied until Source had to show me. Now I can philosophize exactly why I had to be tried, tested, and broken inside. Before I'd have the strength to defy, incapable even to abide to a lie that destroys the soul, in which I hide and confide in order to receive the keys to perceive why this reality is built to correct us by facing the evils that infect us. In challenge, we are armed to protect with the very aspects used to make the world hate us. In developing strength through such inescapable madness, release comes with sadness, yet being set free is undeniably a long-awaited scream for peace. The irony in finding safety in the place I hoped would be the end of me. Finding freedom in the place I left for its oppression. Enlightened by the torture of repression while uncontrollably driven to constant self-expression, praying someone might listen and find comfort in words already heard, but remained unlearned until experience confirmed. The stories are timeless revelations of our soul's deviation and the inevitable consequence. Driven to madness, I even prayed for it. The more mankind suffers its delusions, the more I'm compelled to dispel this torturous confusion. A few lines from David, and I'm reminded why the divine path is paved with endless destruction. As they rewrite the instructions in every culture by different names, so we all believe we think differently, when one particularly destroyed every possible history that completed the divine mystery. Fragmented, we struggled to see what we were told would again be the direction of distorting tenets to shape us towards ignorance. It exists within every faith and sacred text. No reason to take it personally. I mean no offense. Give thanks for the philosophers that kept us seeking the truth within, to decimate the lies, suffering in endless cries, this painful paradigm distinctly blocking our goal, if it is to transcend heaven and nirvana. I pray it's time for it. We connect to a source that's infinite force, waiting for us to believe and show our remorse. In spite of torture so prolonged, I begged for death to redeem me. A journey, if not taken, as well as driving us to breaking, was the final key to accepting everything we're rejecting, while realizing clearly how much they fear me for living consciously and rejecting the lies and the hypocrisy. Because I am an anomaly that exposes and rejects the narcissist's control of the evil that abusive and oppressed coerces us to refuse the knowledge that is our manual of transcendence. If we ignore the verse, the paradigm becomes an unending curse that traps us in a universe so perverse that we march to our enslavement, an eager and willing and ignorant participant, traded in vain to gain value for something with no tangible worth that's destroying the earth, sacrificing the very foundation, rejecting the tools of our liberation until the only chance for correction becomes the very lesson that exposed the evidence needed for reverence as we watch the vision that drove us through it. Battered and bruised for our persecutors' amusement, determined to do whatever it took and rigged to refuse it without controlling it. Even when the pain and the abuse choked us with proof of why it takes destruction to forge a path of rebirth. Freed from a course that has the world so blinded it's actually marching behind it, deluded and rabid, a force of habit for all who refuse to root their mind in the proper translation of an ancient code that frees us from all that deceives us, while teaching us exactly how to be immune to the evils whose favorite plaything is its main source of entertainment, observing the suffering of mankind. Yet eventually its envy will destroy all that it feeds on in order to stay alive. Starved by its own greed, it's rendered extinct, just in time for those who only relinquish their soul to the source of creation, and will only surrender their soul so others will make it. If you continue to worship the false prophet, nothing will be able to stop it. The destruction foretold, in the wake of the cruelty daily unfolding, I say if a good scolding can return us to our nature, it's exactly what I'm praying for. Because we were so blind and ignorant that the only way we would seek it or believe it is by reaching the point where only our faith could redeem us and give us the strength to acknowledge it, so we could accept our blindness at the same time we're given sight, as awareness of why our soul's purpose and intention, regardless of what we believe in, is entwined with the values with which we live our life, and that they are the only liberation from a hellish eternity spent in avoidance of growing from the learning and knowing that ultimately prepares us to withstand all built to ensnare us. So we willingly sacrifice like an addict to its vice. And in all this craving and escaping, we surrender eternity for eternal strife, chasing all the things that train us to reject the simple precepts that can even manifest a window to paradise in this life. If we just pay attention and pursue a perception driven to transcend the obstacles constructed to defeat us, because sadly it's the only thing left that will teach us. The darkness and destruction are the only thing to greet us, because we reject and complain with a violent obsession as we demonize the root of the blessing hidden within the tragedy that shows us that darkness is a reality, truly the shell that exposes and occasionally protects and fights for and against the light. It's the evil that infects it through all its projections, covert and cunning deceptions that has us claiming divinity while we pray to things that disconnect us, while also making us believe that we're right, that this fight is not about who wins, it's about those who can see clearly and help balance it right. Defeating the extremes, tearing us apart at the seams, that helped humanity transcend its savagery through stories of a persecuted and enslaved ancestry. Scattered through all of humanity, that teaches distinctly in a language of divinity the root of a tribe and the forces we will always battle as long as we remain divided. Misled by the corrupted so they can prove to the eternal source that these jealous angels thrown off course by the very force that plagues us, submissive we become enslaved to it, in spite of being instructed and shown over and over the source of our destruction since the beginning of time, and it can only be destroyed by the choice to adhere to the code that connects the tribe. So in due time, we just might have the experiences so ingrained that help explain that this unfolding has continually told us how to discern, but they've persecuted and oppressed it, falsified and redressed it, just enough to deceive us into being the cause of our own destruction. Those with eyes to see and scars that bleed, praying to be freed, are starting to say it's about time. What a profanity that in all our greed and vanity we reject that which saves us for what enslaves us. Because we're too preoccupied by what divides us to see how the only thing to deem us worthy of redemption is those souls with the indignation to believe the faith that saves them, even when it demands it to sacrifice its own life to determine to attain something better. By begging for its redemption through any conditions, it's finally freed and ready of attachments that entangle absolutely everyone until they reach a level of clarity that can only be gained by getting it right. Even through persecution, and most often through the reflection born from the ashes of all that gave meaning to a false and empty plight. Within the injustice and destruction came the pattern that exposes the matter, so simple to repair if we'd only decide to question everything on the path to becoming enlightened. The only thing that divides us and rides us is the illusion that destroys the root that connects us with story upon story that repeats this, but most never manage to read it. Because the force that impedes it manufactured a distortion that deters the courses and perpetuates evil. Until the only option left is to teach you, enlightened by the trials you only have to face because of the choice to remain blind, to evade the work needed because it's just too tedious. Yet in all my travels is the only semblance of balance and unity, unrelenting sense of community, even within its dramatic differences. That, my friends, is what differentiates a tribe from the selfishness and cruelty. The sad thing is that there's a majority feigning authority with impunity, with texts that blind you and bind you to a false prediction that you don't have to do anything to gain redemption, by rejecting the Father while glorifying the rendition, riddled with fiction that has you praying to an image of how your teacher was murdered by genocide. Since I was a child, it enraged me, yet I never understood why. I couldn't evade it. I tried hard to pray to it, but I never could fill the presence. So I searched through every spiritual and religious concept, seeking all that connects while discarding all aspects my soul rejects. Eventually finding the root of all those truths united in perfect clarity. The only place that accepted me and cared for me. But the revelation came when I finally discovered, written in plain sight, everything I believed and even reached without ever laying eyes on the proper and true translation, the one written in a language that's very essence carries the resonance of divine presence, that even my closed mind couldn't deny. The real beauty is that I had spent my whole life seeking the keys within sacred tribes that held the mysticism across the ages to be integrated at the right time, yet was murdered out of the belief because of the savagery that brought into being the very need for that religion to be the only thing capable besides total destruction to help man unite with the tribe and book from which all truths emerged, and all who can find it and observe it are promised return. The rest will be burned, and the way the species murders, tortures, and enslaves its ancestry across every culture and history, we might align with the truth that we are deeply entwined and descended from every evolutionary tide that's helped us rise from our savagery, with values that bring clarity to all the illusions that have been used to divide us. As I look upon it all suddenly with clarity of vision that proves it will be our own decision when fate is dealt swiftly to all who reject endless centuries to correct our iniquities in a space where only our relentless faith in the face of disgrace and from the brink of destruction. After what I've endured, I'll be overjoyed that I was blessed with genetics that ensured I'd be receptive If I could just get home and see where I belong with irrefutable evidence in the peace and the reverence I could only find and would affirm the path I've always roamed. Knowing all along within my soul that we emerged from a tribe before time became a tool for control. So I searched eternally, holding on to the keys my soul had ingrained, giving the history it's no hidden mystery where humanity got lost, and that its serving of consequence will be more than deserving, with 6,000 years of fighting to trade in its sword and get it right by uniting. In all of this suffering, I pray a day comes to destroy the savagery of the most horrific war waged blindly on the front lines of your mind, where your soul disconnected from that single source that we were all born from, long before what many have been taught was the beginning of mankind. Creation is a procession of birth and death and resurrection through ancestral correction, in the wake of destruction, a violent eruption that purges the evil while pushing us to get right. Follow the blind? Sorry, I'm preoccupied with the tools of perception that expose the deception and teach me the structure that guides me to what gives meaning and understanding right where most think source is cruel and unkind. If I actually read headlines, though I am surely studying all the time, when it comes, I imagine it will be just in time. Pardon my rejoicing that in voicing seems cold, but it will be beautiful to behold in the face of the blind and useless destruction by the hands of mankind, while exploiting the ones that are needing and persecuting the ones truly teaching, and destroying so many seeds before they are even breathing. Without grasping, we outnumber them this time, in endurance and mind. And we will be born from every nation and race. One tribe chosen possibly to hold a sacred technology because of unique neurology. That very well could validate intelligent design. I just give thanks I've been blessed to thrive even in the reflection of the most horrific incursion, using children to torture the divergent, or anything people will fight for relentlessly, family, ancestry, culture, and all the manufactured histories, as a means to indoctrinate a generation so long awaited, divine seeds emerging, defying the programming of dysfunction, to expose the conjunction where those that can't ignore will inevitably transform a toxic society. If only people would reject hate and seek unity through the source of all divinity and belief. Can you hear me? They worked hard to disqualify me, chastise and redefine me. From the brink of total insanity, my faith continually guided me, though it looked riddled with endless scrutiny and torturing levels of intensity, in order to enlighten me by awakening the fight in me that survived this eternal repeating more than one time. And in spite of rejecting it all my life, religion, I was unknowingly studying it at the same time amidst the lost tribes, cultivating a faith that will never be denied. It's your choice in the end, and there's still time to choose another side. You don't have to change your beliefs. You simply must let go of the evil that blinded the past and realize that it's actually with the strength of all our differences that we, the human family, can pave a new fate for all of the species. Blessings. The quickest path to redemption. I hope you enjoyed it. There's a lot more coming, and thanks.